life in 3 dimensions got me bent and got me twisted. I know I done said a lot, but I should probably stop pretending. I don't really hold the key and I can't really push a button. I just step up to the mic and try my very best to bust it, but I ran out of breath. It's tight in my chest, my feet just might fail. I can't stand the pressure.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Racially Speaking, where we have real and honest conversations about race as it's viewed through the lenses of faith, family, and vocation. I'm your regular host, David Phipps, and no John Mark today, but it's not just me. I'm joined by, well, I'll let her introduce herself in a second, but wanted to give a little bit of an intro to what's hopefully going to be a little bit of a quasi-ongoing series. I gave it a neat little title. I'm going to call it Gen Z on Justice. So if you know me, and I've alluded to this or mentioned this throughout the podcast, a bunch of different episodes I've probably mentioned it, but I spend a lot of my day-to-day working with Gen Z-ers and college-age students. I do campus ministry and also teach at the university level. And so I really wanted to take some time to catch up and interview and talk to some of the Gen Zers I get to live a lot of life with and pour into and learn a lot from. Part of it's a bunch of different reasons, but one of the biggest reasons I wanted to do this is because, one, I really haven't had enough, we really haven't had enough Gen Z representation on the podcast, and I think they have a lot to say. I know they have a lot to say because I live a lot of life with them. And I also, I think that they get, for better and for worse, a lot of criticism. And so we're going to get into that a little bit. I think there's a stigma out there that Gen Z is ill-equipped to navigate a lot of the issues we talk about here on the podcast. So, look, without further ado, I've got my friend Nifemi here with me. Here on campus in this awesome little recording, open door, giant classroom. And look, Nifemi, thank you so much for coming on here and spending a little bit of time in your busy end of the semester schedule to catch up with me. First, can you introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners? I don't know, feels weird doing like an icebreaker at the end of the semester.
Yeah.
But for our listeners, who are you? What's your major? And yeah, we'll start there.
All right. Hello, my name's Nifemi Ayodele. I'm a junior at Radford, obviously, and my major is psychology and a minor in education.
Awesome. Has it been your major? I think you switched a couple of times, or once maybe.
I did switch in my first semester of my sophomore year. I was first in health and exercise science, and then I realized that I have no passion for that, so psychology was the move.
You said psychology?
Yeah.
Awesome. What, so you said what moved you away from the health sciences? I had a similar trajectory. I ended up doing English. I thought I wanted to do health sciences, and then there was too much math for me. What made you move to psychology?
Well, I was aware of how much interest I had within mental health and helping people with mental health issues, because it hits real close to home for me, because I've had a lot of people, including myself, that have dealt with mental health issues. So just being there and just being able to counsel and help people through their problems is something I have a deep passion for.
That's awesome. That's great. All right. Well, look, let's jump in. You know a little bit about why I've got you on here. Again, thank you so much for lending some of your time to do this. You have a heart. We've had some kind of preliminary conversations over the time we've known each other, and I think we share a similar heart for having these conversations surrounded around justice, race, and ethnicity, and our faith. So, look, right off the bat, how have your views, would you say, on justice been shaped over the last 3 to 4-ish years? And we were talking before we hit record, but what I kind of mean is, and it's okay, I don't want to force anything if there wasn't anything, but have your views on justice been shaped specifically over the last 3 to 4 years, which I'm kind of referring to, the BLM movement, and kind of since 2020, we're about to head into 2024.
Yeah, so I was gonna mention how, like, before the BLM movement, I didn't really care to, like, learn about, you know, things that were, like, going on within our community or any injustices, because, again, it didn't necessarily, like, affect me personally. But then, like, seeing how, like, in the last 3 years, especially, like, with George Floyd, how, like, everything skyrocketed and, like, people were being more outspoken. It got a lot more coverage than I believe I've ever seen compared to, like, other people that have, like, died from police brutality. So just, like, being aware of that more, I was able to just kind of learn for myself and, like, learn, like, oh, what's going on, like, what people have to deal with, even though it doesn't affect me personally.
Yeah, all right, so that's interesting. So when you say affected you personally, would you say the change was more you were made more aware of something like injustices in relation to something like police brutality towards the Black community, and or was it more your views on these issues were shaped by how people were reacting towards them? Because I think you'd agree everything became super polarized.
Yeah, there was a lot going on in that situation with the George Floyd, like, passing. So just seeing, like, people protesting, seeing people advocating for, like, just to, like, be treated as a human, like, just seeing that, it kind of made me realize, like, okay, not even, like, just within the Black community, but, like, a lot of other groups deal with problems where they're just, like, discriminated and, like, persecuted just for being them.
Yeah. That's good. What, so do you think, so it sounds like some of it was probably linked towards how people reacted to what was going on. Would you say?
Yeah.
Would you say there was, like, any surprise in, maybe surprise not the right word, but how did you start to form how you would personally respond to things? I don't mean, like, necessarily posting something on social media or anything, which we'll actually get to a little bit, but, like, how did you feel, I guess I'll ask you personal really quickly, like, how did you feel, like, in your own skin, for lack of a better term, like, how,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, did you feel safe? Did you feel like there was people you could process what was going on with, you mentioned George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor,
Right.
in the midst of the pandemic, all that kind of stuff?
Well, I've always had friends that looked like me.
Yeah.
I never necessarily felt, like, isolated, so it was easy to, like, bring up those conversations because they related with me, or, like, related about, like, okay, a lot of people may look at us differently after a situation like this, or, like, multiple situations like this. So it was, I don't know, I didn't necessarily, like, feel unsafe because, again, I've never had anything like that personally affect me.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, it's just being able to talk about it too made me more aware of the whole situation.
Yeah, no, that's good. I appreciate you sharing. All right, like I said, I'm having you on to kind of, I'm making you speak for all Gen Z-ers, right? kind of kidding, but yeah, I'll ask you for some collective, best you can responses. Obviously,
Right.
It's you speaking as an individual as well. All right, as a Black female Gen Z-er, what do you feel like characterizes your generation versus what other older generations say about you? And I'm asking that because, like, as I mentioned in the intro, I both feel, and I've asked plenty of you guys how you feel like older generations look at you guys, and it's a lot of negativity. Like,
Yeah.
I've heard stuff like lazy, unintelligent. I mean, I've had people in my classes say, stupid, like,
Yeah.
stuff like that, entitled. So just a lot of negative things. I'd wonder if you share that same thought and how you view that from yourself.
Yeah, I most definitely agree to like just those statements because personally, I feel as like Gen Z as a whole, we're very outspoken and open-minded, especially like you see on social media, people just advocating for a lot of stuff that personally like before like I didn't even know about. You can get educated so much from our generation, but older generations, I feel like they downplay the capability we have like to actually like be in touch. I guess like with society, I think they think we live in a bubble, and it's just all about us, and then we want to find the easy way out. So I mean, that could be the case for anyone, but personally, I think that there's a lot of ways that we're just like finding ways to just do better in different aspects.
Yeah. So I'd say let's take social media, for example. Do you, to paint with broad strokes for a second, because I'm sure it's somewhere in between, but do you feel like the effects of social media, I guess on people in general, but specifically with Gen Z, is more positive or negative when it comes to like activism and awareness? Does that make sense? So I'd say like the obvious pro would be, I can get on social media and feel like emotionally or racially connected to somebody like on the other side of the world because of social media. But on the flip side, I see the argument for, well, that's blah blah blah, that's not real connection because it's on the internet. So I don't know, like how do you navigate the tension of both? Because I'd say that's positive and negative, but I don't know. Does that make sense?
Oh, of course, because I feel the same way when it comes to social media, because I realized it for myself how you just get used to like seeing all the coverage being made, and at the end of the day, it does bring awareness to the situation, which is a good thing, but it's just like once you like shut your phone off, that's it. Like a lot of people just keep it on social media. They don't necessarily a post can only do but so much, and people will like just leave it at that. But then again, there are people that will go out their way to actually like donate to charities or protest. So you kind of have to like take accountability for yourself and be like, okay, if I actually have if I really do care about these people that are struggling across the world, if I empathize with them, what can I do, or what efforts can I make to help them? Yeah,
that's good. So I mean, on one side, I think like especially during like a pandemic, there was information overload and screen time overload, because it's like, well, that's the only way we can connect with each other because we're all stuck in our houses and stuff. But also people, not everybody, but a lot of people don't realize that, like, you mentioned George Floyd and like stuff like that. Like social media is how most of us became aware of something like that happening.
Yeah.
And that was the catalyst for, a ton of change. I think that was the pro. Obviously, there's gonna be pushback from some people, but that was the pro, like, of something like that. And like, I think that's the positive side of awareness and just the accessibility of a lot of things, and even connection across the the internet and social media and stuff.
Right.
Do you feel like, with that said, that, and again specifically like with Gen Z, that's having a negative effect on how you guys navigate issues? Or do you think there's such thing in general, but do you think there's information overload that is also working against you guys?
I would say that when it comes to social media, like it's again, there's good, but it's just also a place, it's like just people sharing their opinions, so you get so many different sides on social media. Like everyone is not gonna collectively like agree on the same topic about something, and if you really do feed into all those like different comments and stuff, then you're like, okay, you're just gonna kind of go with the majority, just kind of go with what most people think. I mean, unless you just are stubborn and like don't want to just think for yourself. But I don't know, information overload, I would say it kind of gets like overwhelming sometimes, because I mean, in that moment, that's like all you see, all you hear about, like when it like something just happened, and then before you know it, like after a week or so or 2 weeks, for however long, like it just kind of disappears. I don't know.
Yeah. I didn't put this in our notes, but I've done an episode recently like on cancel culture. Is that a term that, I mean, Gen Z, do you guys still use that?
I feel like, was it? I don't know if it was back in like COVID times where everybody was getting canceled. Like, I don't know, specifically.
So what do you mean? Okay, so what do you mean by that? Because
canceled?
In this conversation, I'm obviously the old head. I view it much more like it's not even a real thing, in a sense of, all I'm hearing is that people don't want to, certain people don't want to be held accountable for things that people are being now made aware of. Now, I don't think it's okay to show no mercy and grace or forgiveness to people. Like, I don't think I'm not pro that by any means, but too often, in my opinion, people are attributing, calling things cancel culture that aren't actual cancel culture. It's like, no, you're uncomfortable with unpacking something that could have been really problematic for a long time. Yeah. I don't know. Do you guys still use that term or apply it to
personally,
things?
I don't see it happen as much as I used to. Okay. When I did see it, it would always be about stuff that like a person did years back. Okay. And I don't know, personally, the whole like cancel culture thing, like it doesn't really do much. I don't think it's as effective, because at the end of the day, the person can still do what they want. They have been doing what they want the whole entire time. Like, they've did such wrong thing, whatever they may perceive it as, but I don't think it's effective. And it was just like a whole bunch of like people just wanting to see, I guess just like wanting to get someone, you know, big on social media. They just kind of want to let them die out, so they don't have the just the, I don't want to say fame, but like the popularity that they do have. I feel like they just kind of want them to be unpopular so they don't have to see them anymore.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I see both. I think, again, I'm representative of the older generation in this conversation, but I think I just view it as, I think I care about accountability when it comes to some of the things we're navigating here, even me asking that question. And I think there can be, I think if we are promoting a culture where you can never make a mistake, that can be, we're both, Christians, and that's, anti really what we believe in, with the gospel and, forgiveness and whatnot. But I do think that I don't think there should also be license for or enabling of people, especially who hold prominent, whether it's popularity, as you mentioned, or power, to just also do whatever they want without ramifications. Yeah. Which I think, saying out loud, most people would agree with that, but it's when I feel like people are allergic to holding people accountable that I'm like, what's going on here? It feels like you just are resistant towards something like accountability.
Yeah. Because, I don't want to say that holding someone accountable, like that's the right thing to do, especially if they did do wrong. But then again, like the way they kind of made, like specifically cancel culture, it was kind of just like more hate, just hating on them rather than like helping them learn from their mistakes.
Yeah.
Because like you can judge someone for something they did, but at the end of the day, what good does that do? Do they really learn from what they did wrong in the past?
Yeah.
So it's just like, if you do want to hold someone accountable, at least do it in a way where it's effective, rather than just like hating on them and judging them.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's great. It's not necessarily helpful to, extend all of your energy towards the actual canceling and
the action
harming somebody versus accountability, which, that's a good word. And I'm asking you specifically about the cancel culture thing because I think that, a lot of people would attribute Gen Z for responsible for creating, something like cancel culture.
On, again, Twitter, TikTok, I don't have Twitter, but I just know for a fact that, it was, a trending hashtag at one point. But it's, you see so much, especially, with celebrities and everything. They were cancel this person, cancel that person. And it was just, so repetitive at one point. And it's oh, yeah, people forget that everyone is a human at the end of the day that makes mistakes. But, again, they should be held accountable for what they did. Right,
and I think that, again, non-Gen Zers can attribute something like cancel culture, or whatever you want to call it, the heightened awareness of everything as almost like an entitlement thing of, Gen Z's coming around now with social media and just trying to change everything, I think is a nice way to put it. And a lot of, again, older generation wants to look at that and of just, everything's got to be comfortable, everything's got to feel good, everything's got to be given, and the younger, generation is just bent on critiquing everything that came before them. And I see both sides. I'm like, sure, if that's all, if you're extending all of your energy into just unpacking history and nitpicking every little thing, then you're going to run out of energy pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's some really problematic things that need to be undone, and I think at the same time, Gen Z is very equipped to be able to do that. Which I think that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to Gen Z again, I've seen a lot of people my age doing things that I would have probably never thought of doing just because of how old we are, and seeing people who are older, okay, they're the ones that's supposed to speak, we don't have a say in this. But then again, I feel at the end of the day, we are trying to again, as you said, unpack stuff, but history still continues to repeat itself time and time. So it's not like they're not doing it for no reason, but we're trying to make this change. A lot of things are happening the same way or even happening worse, so it's a little sometimes disappointing. But
yeah, do you think it's fair to say, personally, because we're talking about social media and the news and kind of sensory information overload, do you think there's truth to saying that it really is that, meaning we're becoming more aware of things that have always been happening versus all these new things are happening? Do you feel that way personally at all? Stuff that maybe you've navigated throughout your life, but then maybe people that haven't navigated the same issues as you are becoming aware of it now in the last few years, and are you kind of I already knew this was happening. This isn't overwhelming. It's just everyone knows about it now.
Yeah, that makes me think about the what's going on between Israel and Palestine, because this now that it's becoming just getting more awareness on social media.
Yeah, it's a great comparison.
Yeah, people are this is something like that's just like occurring now, like what's going on. But I've learned that it's been going on for years. So it's just like, it's kind of crazy because everyone is just at like different levels with like the information and knowledge that they hold about like a situation like that. And it's like, I mean, it's good now because a lot of people are trying to help the people that are struggling on both sides. So that's a good thing. But then again, it's like, okay, we've kind of just been like closeted like on like what's really going on in the world because we just like didn't know. So
yeah, absolutely. That's a great comparison. All right, last, I didn't even mean to camp out here, but I think it's hopefully helpful to listeners. So with, I mentioned towards the beginning, I'm trying to figure out how to ask it. So we all have phones.
Yeah.
We're all, not just social media, but we have essentially handheld computers nowadays, which might be all you're used to. I always remember like flip phones without internet. So, is there entitlement that Gen Z feels like they deserve, which I guess is kind of saying the same thing, but I don't know, do you feel like the rise in, or I don't know, maybe growing up with the iPhone and cell phone, whatever, so you might not even be able to answer this, but I don't know, how do you feel like your generation's like social skills or like ability to just have like conversations with each other, like in-depth conversations with each other are like, is it a fair critique on Gen Z to say like you guys are suffering like with those skills because of how much you guys are on screens?
Yes, of course. I mean, I personally feel that like our phones, social media as a whole, can affect so much, again, like specifically speaking with like relationships, because I mean, when we're spending so much time on our phones, what are we not doing? We're not actually conversating with people. So I feel like people get caught up on like just on their screens. So I feel like a lot of people, even myself in a way, lack those social skills or just, you know, being in the moment with people, because like, okay, it's so easy to just look at your phone and be caught up on whatever's going on social media with people across the world. It's crazy. But
I asked my class this the other day, but do you feel like, I guess like in a college classroom, do you feel like you guys are having conversations that are healthy and helpful? What I mean is, I feel like, at least I grew up like this in the classroom setting, or even I feel like this is probably true in professional settings for the most part still, but, you know, what do you stay away from? Politics, religion, I guess those are the two main things. But I've just often found that, like, especially in the classroom setting, it's hard to expect the conversation to be completely full and engaging if you're tiptoeing around the issues that people have really strong opinions about. Now, I get it. I'm not saying like we need to always just debate. But, you know, I'd argue that, one, if we're growing up teaching and learning that, okay, we need to keep those kinds of things to ourselves, but then when all that stuff is on the table of like really dire circumstances, then it makes sense that we're like kind of deer in the headlights, right? Of like, whoa, like how we don't know how to talk about this. And I don't attribute that to social media. I attribute it to like, well, of course, like someone for whatever reason has told us to not talk about that stuff.
Right.
I don't know where my question was, but do you feel like, as a college student right now, do you feel like you and your generation, you guys are having helpful conversations in the classroom? Or do you feel like it's still like let's stay away from those things?
So switching to psychology and like education, you're, you know, gonna be surrounded by people that are different from you.
Yeah.
And especially within education, you have to be held accountable. Like, you can't treat someone differently because of their race or religion. So it's nice being surrounded by people that actually, some of them have different viewpoints than me, but like they know how to navigate the conversation and see other people's point of view, because I don't know, it's kind of hard to talk with people, or it's uncomfortable when they don't want to listen, or when the other side won't listen, or the other side won't understand your point of view. So if like both sides are kind of judging each other and not coming to like an actual understanding, like a middle line, then I feel like the conversations would be kind of pointless. But like if you do have people that are like, oh, okay, let me see how you think, and you hear how I think, and that's just it, then you can like actually engage and learn a lot more about different things and about yourself.
So do you feel like, would you feel confident having, I'm trying to think of something I have an opinion about, I don't know, like do you feel, maybe not even you, like in a classroom, one of your psychology classrooms, I don't know, do you feel like if the professor asked, oh gosh, I'm putting myself on the spot. I don't know, do you feel like the classroom overall is equipped to have that conversation where it's like a safe environment? Or do you feel like overall it would probably be like, this is going to get too testy?
I feel like a lot of people be beating around the bush, as you're saying, like tiptoeing around it, only because you never know what people are thinking, especially like if you don't have I personally don't have many like relationships with my classmates, so you never know what the person is thinking. And I do feel like a lot of people have a fear of like just being judged and perceived differently. That's not everyone, but I feel like that could like withhold someone from sharing their opinions and stuff. So I don't think they couldn't have an engaging conversation. It's just like leading up to it would be just a lot of awkwardness because we don't really know each other.
Right. This is good. I'm putting you on the spot with some of these. So this is more just even me wanting to know as a teacher. But do you feel like the classroom nowadays like leans towards one way of thinking versus another? Like I'm just complete speculation, like on your feeling, like because you, based on what I know about you, you kind of are in a little bit in both worlds. I think we would maybe share some of this, but like, identify as a Christian, but then have a lot of views that maybe with painting with super broad strokes don't necessarily align with, I'm doing air quotes, like Christianity. Like you care a lot about racial justice and stuff, but you're, outspoken about your Christian faith. So do you feel like you would navigate tension hypothetically on both sides of that?
Are you like saying,
like you mentioned being judged, like people being afraid of being judged. So I would say like, even I remember being a student, so like I would fear being judged for talking about, my faith or something.
Right.
But then I honestly, like I would fear probably being judged more by, if I'm honest, like by Christians if I bring up, police brutality or race injustice. Does that make sense? Do you share that same sentiment at all?
Okay, yes, because speaking like my own personal experience.
Yes.
Like at my church, again, like what happened with police brutality and like different situations that like may involve that, they don't speak on it or touch on it at all. And a lot of people, anywhere you go, people are going to have different opinions, but I don't know, because you're just so close with the people like in your church and stuff, and it's like, how like the Bible is like you read it and you follow that, so it's like, oh, if you have any other different thoughts about different things, like speaking on like racial injustices, it's just like, oh, they don't want to bring that in there. You know, they just kind of want everything to be like, oh yeah, you follow, like, we're following God, and like that's what matters. So like anything that's outside of that, you know, it's
getting away from Jesus,
right,
or the gospel. Okay,
something like that. Yeah. And they don't tend to, I don't know, they just kind of act like it doesn't happen. When it's a real thing. It happens everywhere, so it's kind of just, I don't know, it's a little discouraging when it's like, oh yeah, at the end of the day, these are still people that we should pray about, or not pray about, but pray for, and topics we should pray for, because we, you know, only God can really help, you know, these situations. So
yeah,
I feel like hopefully, like, people are more comfortable with speaking on things like this.
Yeah. Would you say, I appreciate you sharing that, kind of along those lines, like, has there been, could you describe a time, like, in your life when you feel like you were freed to be your full self? And so, like, I'm sure you can, but like specifically for this conversation being like racially, ethnically, I mean, there's a lot of things at play, so I know it's a big question, but we're both from 757, you're from Newport News. We're in little Radford, Virginia.
Yeah.
So it's like a completely different culture for the most part, certainly in the surrounding area.
Yeah. But,
you know, on campus is much more diverse than the surrounded area, but still very different than Newport News, you know, Norfolk, where I'm from. All that, and I feel like you're kind of touching on it when you're mentioning, and for people that don't know, you know, you, Nifemi, I'll say this, like, your disposition, your personality is very, like, gentle. Like, you're not, I didn't bring you on because you're like this huge, like giant justice warrior, and I think that means something, because what you're saying is like, is really honest, and I think somebody, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like, somebody with maybe your disposition at a time like now could easily assume like you might not care about this as much because you're not like outspoken and stuff, but you do, like, it affects you. It like affects, I feel like, being comfortable in who you are, like, especially in like a situation or a community like a church, when people aren't speaking out about something that's affecting, whether it's you or just people that look like you. Right. Like, that means something. You know, I've heard the phrase, you know, silence is deafening. Like, it's, you know, I know you know what I'm saying. Okay, sorry, I ramble. Has there been a time, like, where you felt like you felt freed up to be fully you, when you obviously previously couldn't be, along the lines of, like, okay, so I'll speak for myself. Like, an example is, it's really freeing when somebody does exactly what we just said, like, speaks up for you on your behalf, and you're like, okay, I don't need to like wonder what people think, or like, I don't need to wonder how it's gonna affect people when I say this, and this. Yeah.
So I do value one-on-one conversations so much, because I am a soft-spoken person. So most of the time I don't initiate these kind of conversations, but like, when there is a time and a place, and I see that person, you know, is comfortable enough to talk about these certain things, then I'm just like, okay, one-on-one, like, let's go, like, how do you feel about this? Because I have a lot to say too, or I, you know, feel a certain way about this because it affects me in some way. So most of the time, it's kind of hard up at Radford. I mean, apart from like my close friends that I can like easily talk to about certain things, most of the time I'm kind of like putting on a front or something. I don't know. It's just, where it's just like, oh yeah, where I seem a little oblivious to, like, I guess if we're talking about like race and everything, I'm like, oh, okay, it doesn't really matter. But then, like, when I'm with my friends that share like similar stories or ideas as me, I'm like, oh, okay, we can actually talk about this and engage normally.
Okay, yeah. So that's good. I mean, I appreciate you sharing that. Trying to think of maybe a specific example outside looking in, I guess a little bit inside. So we go to church together, and we're part of a church that prioritizes multi-ethnicity, and like we really care about that. And by no means is are we or the church doing it perfectly by any means. And we're again in the New River Valley.
Yeah.
So we're not in huge city or 757 area. Has there been, in my experience, even being in a place where people's hearts are open to talking about these kinds of things regularly, like it doesn't have to be necessarily with where we go to church or anything, but has there been a specific instance like that where it's been like, oh, okay, like I feel, because you mentioned, I guess, maybe feeling like you have to just pick, okay, well, it's all just get along, we don't need to talk about this.
Yeah.
But it's at the same time really freeing to be able to feel like you can.
Yeah.
Has it been like, has there been a specific time where you felt that freedom, and maybe it's been, as you started to go to, where we go to church together?
I don't know if I would say the church, but I think there's like, I don't know, for me, there's not as many instances where I'm like kind of speaking about stuff like this. So I mean, I don't know if I would say the church necessarily. I mean,
no, that's okay.
I most definitely like going and attending the Vine and everything. Seeing it and seeing like how much you guys do focus on that has like created a safe space and like in my head, because it's just like, oh, okay, everyone's, it's like it's being known, like, okay, it's okay to be different. Everyone's different in their own way, and it's like at the end of the day we still all love each other. So people are gonna have different experiences and everything, but like we still will all come together and congregate as a whole. So I mean,
you also that's good. No, that was great, and I wasn't trying to lead you into saying something about that the church was awesome or anything.
Oh no, but it's true.
I want to hear err on the side of honesty for sure. I remember you said something about, it might have been in class one time, or like someone said something to you about how much they were struck by how many people of color were in the class or on campus, and they're like, oh man, this is so much more diverse than where I'm used to being. And you were kind of like, this is more diverse? What? Because to you it's like, this is like just the culture shock of like, whoa, this is, which to you it's kind of the opposite. It's like, this is way less, obviously people of color than I'm usually around. I don't know, has that so when I was in school, like where we're at in Radford, like was nowhere as diverse as now. Even as you said, like it shocking that someone would think that this is like the peak of diversity. But to me, I see what people are saying. It's like, no, like when I was in school, it's like way less percentage of people of color. But what has been like, what made you settle into coming to the New River Valley for college versus staying somewhere where you're around more people that look like you?
Well, just being surrounded by people that look like me, I don't know, you kind of just, not that it like you're creating biases on purpose, but it's just like, okay, you only know one thing. I didn't really know much about New River Valley area. Not a clue. I honestly thought we were in the north part of Virginia, whole time we're on the west part. So just like kind of coming up here and just like knowing it's a different situation, and meeting different people I don't typically, I wouldn't typically talk to or go up to, has made me just more comfortable to make relationships with like anybody, and not like feel like I'd be perceived differently or like be judged, because like now that I'm like up here, again, I've just been able to like make a lot of relationships with people that I probably wouldn't have thought of before, like being down in Newport News and stuff. So like it's nice to just like broaden myself in that area.
Yeah. All right, I gotta let you go soon, but let's end with some hopeful things. So looking forward, sorry, excuse me. What are you hopeful about looking ahead to 2024 when it comes to race and justice in general? Does anything come to mind?
What do I hope for?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are probably disillusioned and fearful. I'm probably one of them.
Yes.
With an election year coming up, it feels like, obviously, just even in that, it could be, I don't know. A lot of negative thoughts come to mind of like, oh my gosh, I hope we're not headed back towards where we were at in 2021.
Yeah.
My prayer is that we're not. But I want to end on hope. So like, are you hopeful for anything moving forward?
Well, I guess just.
And if you're not, I'm not trying to get you to make something up. Like, be honest.
I mean, I hope that people are just gonna be able to be more open-minded, and not kind of let their, like, if they have any biases beforehand, like, just don't let that get in the way of like learning, because like a fixed mindset won't get you anywhere when you're seeing like different things going on that you might typically like agree with. So I mean, if people can actually like sit down and like engage in conversations like this and not feel like they have to like defend themselves aggressively, just simply talk, it can make so many differences on like just again like learning about different stuff. If that's something, I mean, that'd be probably the only thing I kind of hope for, because like that's kind of the base at where it starts to make changes.
That's great. For Gen Z, do you feel like what do you want non-Gen Z people to take away from this conversation, and how would you plead with people who view Gen Z as, or very negatively? Like, what would you say to them?
That again, just simply we're people that have thoughts and opinions, so we shouldn't be discredited on them. And just like, I mean, again, like I respect your elders always, but age doesn't necessarily have to like deal with the amount of knowledge, you know? So I feel like if people like in older generations, if they were just willing to simply listen and just talk, like not necessarily like, oh, okay, I'm older, so you know I get this say on everything, but simply like just talk like eye to eye, then you can like learn so much. I could learn so much from them, and they can learn so much from me. So
yeah, that's great. Femi, thanks so much for doing this.
Of course.
This is great. Your wealth of knowledge, which I was not surprised. I'm not surprised in the least. I appreciate your knowledge representing Gen Z, and thank you for sharing so much of your personal story.
Yes.
Really kind of on the fly. I know we have some prompts that we had agreed upon, but I appreciate you kind of going off the cuff with some, of your personal story. Is really helpful, and I enjoyed enjoyed hearing it. All right, listeners, thank you so much for listening. The music you're listening to is done by our guy, Dylan Dent. Our artwork is created by Ashley Bush, and we'll see you guys next time.
The nightmare might scare you, no worse than reality. They hunt you by day, R.I.P. Ahmaud Arbery. Everybody got a time, but that's less than comforting. I hope I'm alive by the time they choose to comfort me. Mosquitoes in the vein, or leeches on my soul. This money on my mind is a fracture in my bones. You get crippled by continuing existence like a ghost. And they wonder why we drink, and they wonder why we smoke, and they wonder why we think that everything's a joke. I'm shocked that we can sleep, must be the thought of letting go.